I've enjoyed watching other language learners talk about their journey on YouTube and what I can learn from their successes and failures, but this is kind of a bit of a self-indulgent video in that way. So if that's not interesting to you, I'll link some other videos or another video somewhere up here. But if you want to hear about some of my successes and failures, maybe what you can learn from it, I'll be talking about myself and what I've done in language learning so far and how it's going. So get comfy. So my Spanish learning so far, I did do a bit of Spanish in school. Genuinely, I learned nothing. I dropped it very quickly. In my 20s, you can guess my age, I went to the Dominican Republic with friends and could only say, whenever I needed to order food and I wasn't with someone who knew some Spanish, jamón and huevos was all I could say for eggs and ham. And that's all I would eat if I didn't have someone else to order for me. So genuinely no Spanish, bar that. I did Ollie Rich's Spanish Uncovered course. It's an interesting course that sits between comprehensible input and the sort of traditional language learning method of explaining grammar rules and things like that. I'm going to do a video reviewing the course and I want to be honest about it, about the good and the bad. It's an interesting course, but it gets you out of being a complete beginner, essentially. So I did that at the beginning of the year. In fact, I did have a slight gap between doing that and then I've graduated onto watching and listening to Dreaming Spanish. So Pablo Roman, who does the videos talking about various subjects. I've done my video already on how I'm learning Spanish with YouTube. It's not the perfect way of learning Spanish because some of the videos I don't find to be super compelling. That's fine. There are enough videos on there to just keep watching. Frustratingly, I will say I've watched all of the intermediate videos that are in, if you want to say Iberian Spanish, so Spanish of Spanish speakers from Spain, because the vocabulary is slightly different from speakers of various types of Latin American Spanish. What I'm doing is I have, where are they? I bought these bad boys. I'll put a link below. It will probably be an affiliate link, but I'm not trying to sell these to anybody, but this is genuinely what I use. So I've got these bone conduction headphones. So the ear is open when you're listening to stuff, so it actually conducts the sound through your bone, which sounds a bit weird. But if I'm walking the dog, I had noise cancelling headphones before and it's just not particularly safe to be crossing roads and stuff with those on. And whenever I'm washing up and doing the dishes, if my wife wants to talk to me, it's better if I can hear what's going on. So because I can wear these all the time, I can get massive amounts of input. So I will get at least 2 hours a day of listening to Spanish. And the progress I've made in a short period of time just from committing to do something every day and focusing on just input. So that's the majority of what I'm doing for Spanish. Now this is fascinating. I'll do a whole video about crosstalk at some stage as well, and I'll give examples of it. So crosstalk, which is another thing I got from Pablo, is where instead of a language exchange, we do half an hour of one language with someone else who wants to learn, let's say English, and then the other half an hour in, say English, whichever, Spanish and English, you split the time. I have a conversation with an italki community tutor. He speaks to me in Spanish and I talk back to him in English. We talk about generally pretty interesting things and I'm not speaking any Spanish yet. So actually as a Spanish learner, I'm understanding a native speaker talking to me fairly normally. I know he's probably adjusting his speed as he talks to me, but I'm just understanding it. And because of that, my brain doesn't hurt by the end of the hour because I'm just enjoying an engaging conversation. Whereas when I would do Chinese lessons, initially at the end of an hour of trying to focus and remember how to talk Chinese and say things correctly, I could feel like my brain hurting because it was just exhausted. Whereas crosstalk I found is just a really pleasant conversation. I'll do a video about crosstalk at some point in the future because it's really interesting method of language learning. What I would say is quite interesting because Adan, who I do these lessons with, he's completely fluent in English. So I don't necessarily have to really change how I explain things or say things. I just have to make sure I enunciate so he can hear what I'm saying properly, which makes it easier as opposed to having a community teacher who's not completely fluent in English, if that's your native language, because then it's a bit awkward. I did have one teacher who I approached who said that they didn't want to do a lesson like that. They would only do it in the way they do a lesson. So that was kind of, is what it is, kind of annoying. But yeah, look up crosstalk and I'll do a video about crosstalk as well at some point in the future. Really, really cool. So Spanish is already going pretty well. When I first started Spanish Uncovered, I did do some lessons online with an italki teacher where I'd be trying to speak Spanish. Because I was such a low level of Spanish at the time, the teacher who would try and teach me in a more of a sort of traditional type sense would be explaining grammar rules to me, which made zero sense to me because I didn't have enough Spanish. I didn't understand the grammar rules because I had almost zero examples of them. He'd correct me and I'd start speaking again and immediately make the same mistake and go, oh yeah, I just told you. You're like, yeah, well, I don't know Spanish yet. That's why I can't yet produce the language properly. So Crosstalk is just negated all of that. I just focus on understanding the language and I'm naturally getting a sense of the grammar, although because I'm still at this earlier stage, I wouldn't be able to produce the grammar properly, although I get an immediate sense of the past or who's with all the conjugation of words. So far that's going all right. So I'm currently at 401 hours of Spanish. I've been tracking it on Dreaming Spanish on the platform there. It records every hour of the amount of videos you watch on there, and you can update with any hours outside of the platform as well. I would like to get to 1,000 hours before I start to speak. I don't know why I've got this idea in my head. It might well be that I start speaking before then, because there's times I want to say stuff in Spanish when I'm with my tutor, but I'm trying to hold back because I don't want to practice bad habits before I've got to a stage where I can naturally understand the correct grammar and produce it. And the same for types of vocabulary or even pronunciation. I don't want to ingrain poor pronunciation. I've already got a better understanding of the sounds of the language, and I can understand now different accents from not just different countries but within countries as well. So I'm hoping my pronunciation will be better if I hold back. I don't know the science behind that. Someone else will tell you, I'm sure. So my minimum amount of hours per day is 2. That's what I aim for, but usually I can get more than that, 3, 4, some days 5. And if I keep going that way, I'm planning on then getting to my 1,000 hours and then start speaking. Might start speaking before. I'm hoping to then do that by around February next year if I can calculate my hours correctly. What I'd like to do though, after that, I started off being a monolingual. Imagine being that. Maybe some of you are. You've got this, guys. Just keep going. And then I started with Chinese, and that's why I struggled for years and years, and that's one of the motivations for wanting to make these videos is just being bad at language learning, trying the traditional method, following what people say you should be doing in terms of grammar and flashcards, and it just didn't go in. And then I went with just reading. I just had to learn enough characters to read basic graded readers. The stories weren't captivating, but they were enough that I could start reading without having to remember rules and things like that. And reading and then listening to the audiobook for those stories, that's where I started to make some progress in Chinese and worked my way up different graded readers with different amounts of vocabulary in them. Such a change to my language learning. And then I realized I could learn a foreign language, despite thinking that I was one of those people who would never do it. So I took that enthusiasm and some of that knowledge to Spanish. And now that I've gone with Spanish, I think my Spanish will quite quickly, when I start speaking, overtake my Chinese. I'll go back to Chinese and go, right, I get it. There's like TPRS videos about Spanish on YouTube. There's no Dreaming Spanish yet. I know Pablo's probably got that in that works at some stage. And I found a really interesting community teacher on italki who I want to start with. So that's the plan, is I don't want to put Spanish down yet and jump between different languages. I'm making progress with Spanish, so I don't want to split my time between languages, but if I can get to I dream of getting to C1 by February. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but just lots of input. And then at the stage I can start speaking, then we'll see how that goes. And then spring next year, the plan is to pick Chinese up again and take all of this stuff that I've learned and put it into Chinese. So there's a Chinese community teacher on italki who looks really fun and uses comprehensible input type methods. There's now loads of TPRS videos of Chinese on YouTube. I know Pablo hasn't yet got Dreaming Chinese going, but that sort of approach of using this idea of language acquisition and not studying it per se. The only thing with Chinese is there's this HSK system, which is basically a way of different levels for Chinese, and at different levels there's different amounts of vocabulary, and lots of the graded readers follow that system. So I kind of I'm going to use Chinese 0 to hero to also get through that system, so the point I can, if I pick up a graded reader at this level and it uses vocabulary from HSKs 1 to 5, I'll know that I know that vocabulary. What I would say, I also wrote on my list here, the issue with setting goals. Now, I think it's kind of good to have something to aim for, but I'm not going to worry too much about not hitting those goals. It's just something like a little bit of extra motivation, like I've got to do at least 2 hours of input every day. If I don't hit it, I've still made progress. And I think we have to be happy with the progress that we've made and not go, oh, today I didn't hit that, whatever metric it is, because, well, there's tomorrow and you can do that. So I sometimes have to remind myself of these things as well. And I also wrote my little plan here, but it's good to have some sort of plan, even if we don't end up at the destination, at least we've made progress. So there you go. So that's what I've got so far. 1,000 hours of input of Spanish, hopefully, maybe not quite that much, but hopefully. And then I'm going to start speaking. And then once I've got to a stage that I'm happy enough with my Spanish that I feel like I can put it to one side and it won't just fall apart, pick up my Chinese again, because I did the other day, just whilst I was having a coffee, pick up one of my Chinese books on the shelf here, and I realized I'd forgotten quite a few characters. So that's going to be very painful when I pick up the Chinese again, because I wasn't at a level, I think, where I could put it down and it be perfectly intact when I pick it back up. It'll take me a little bit of time to do that. So watch this space on that. If you're interested, hit subscribe. How's your language learning going? Have you just started? What are your plans for the future? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm not some kind of online polyglot, but sometimes the heights that the polyglots get to seem so far away. So for humans like us, mere mortals, we'll just have to stick together and keep going. So good luck. I'll see you in the next video.